Welcome to Dare Yourself. I'm Natalie Kogan. I'm coming to you from my art studio, a place of messy, imperfect action, and we are here to talk about reinvention, courage, and why action always beats perfection. It took me until I was 40 years old to give myself permission to paint, even though I always wanted to do it. And even then, and for years, I was really quiet about it. But last year, for my 49th birthday, I made a dare to myself that was pretty terrifying. I decided to stop making art and actually become an artist. I dared myself to have a major art show for my 50th birthday with no gallery, no idea when I would do it or I would do it or what would happen. And today I'm sharing how that dare became a reality and why your someday dream is actually a today calling that you should start acting upon. Let's get into it. So I want to share the story with you because it's been many, many years in the making. And I just turned 50 a couple weeks ago, so it's very timely that I'm recording this episode. But I had wanted to paint and make art for most of my life, as long as I can remember. I grew up going to museums. Art was always around. I think I might have dabbled in school, but I never gave myself permission to paint because being an artist did not fit neatly into this box that I put myself into this very narrow way in which I saw myself as, a business executive, a tech entrepreneur, a breadwinner for my family. Like making art didn't fit. It felt silly. It felt like an indulgence to paint. And so I never let myself. And finally, it was around when I turned 40, so a decade ago. Oh, my goodness. I had completely burnt out. And I was running a tech company that I founded at the time, a company called Happier, helping hundreds of thousands of people live happier lives. But I was in a very, very dark place. It wasn't really that I was overworking, which I was. It's that I'd become so disconnected from myself, from my emotions, from what made me feel good. And I didn't just burn out. It was like a life out. And it's like all the lights just went out. And in that really dark space, I had to put my company on hold. I could hardly function. I gave myself permission to do something that I'd always wanted to do because I couldn't do the things that I should do. Right. And so it was like this tiny opening. And I signed up to go to this retreat in Tuscany. That was a watercolor retreat. I was turning 40. My life was in a really difficult place, all of it, my marriage, my career, my company, everything. And I did it as like an act of almost defiance. And it took a lot to convince myself to do it because that voice was there yelling, "How dare you spend money on yourself when you haven't figured out your life? How dare you take time when, look at you, you have failed in every way." Sure, that voice is familiar to many of you, but I went to this retreat. It was very funny actually, because I did not read the fine print and it was me and 8 semi-professional watercolor artists. And I'd never really done watercolor, but it was fantastic and wonderful. And it opened something up on me. And I came back and we had this little room in the basement, in the corner of our basement. And I set up an easel and I got some paint and I started to paint. And for years, I kept it really quiet. I mean, my family knew I'd brought some art upstairs. We hung it in our house, but mostly I was hiding. And the reason I was hiding is because I I was afraid of how people would react. What would my business colleagues, would people in the world that who knew me as a speaker and an author, would they take me seriously? What if my art was no good? Would people like laugh at me or judge me? So I was really afraid. And so I just kept it really quiet. Eventually I started sharing it a little bit more. My publisher convinced me to put one of my watercolors on the cover of the Awesome Human Project, my second book. But art was always something that I just considered like it's also what I'm doing. So I'm a speaker and I'm an author and I'm a reinvention architect and I mentor leaders and I'm a mom and a wife and I also make art. whenever I would tell people, it would actually be in this tone of voice. And I also make art. It was a side thing. And last year, when I was turning 49, I asked myself, what do I really want for my 50th birthday? It's a number, right? It's a significant milestone. And the answer it just was right there from inside of me. It just was immediate. I was like, I want to have an art show. I want to have an art show. And I said it out loud to my husband, Avi, and it was exciting to say it, but also completely terrifying. And also, I had no idea where, how, what. Like, I'm recording this from my art studio. I didn't even have an art studio at the time, right? I was still making art in the basement of a different house now, but I didn't even have an art studio. But I said, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is my dare to myself. This is my gift to myself. I want to do an art show for my 50th birthday. And a couple of weeks after that, my husband and I were in Mexico City. It's one of the cities we love to go to. We've been going for the past 5 years for a couple of weeks. It is a city of art and color and wonderful people and food. And if you haven't been, you have to go. And we went there, and it was their art week. So they host from February 5th through 8th every year. They host an international art week where artists from all over the world come and exhibit there. And they have many different pavilions. And they had this huge pavilion for international galleries that was amazing, a place for conceptual art. And then on one of our last days, we actually went to this pavilion, which is called Bada. And it's the part of Art Week that is dedicated to independent artists. So it's about 100 independent artists who go there to exhibit their art. You cannot be a gallery. You have to be an independent artist. And Avi and I went there, and it was fantastic. We loved so much of the art. It was really inspiring. And about 2 minutes after we walked in, we're walking around, Avi says to me, you could totally be here. And two things occurred to me in that moment. I'm very lucky to have my biggest cheerleader as my life partner. But two, oh my God, no freaking way. Like, what are you talking about? I've never done a big art show, right? Like, I've sold some of my art, but I've never shown it that way before. And then another nudge from the universe, we turn a corner, and there was this wonderful artist there. And we started talking to her. We bought one of her paintings. And again, Avi, my cheerleader, was like, oh, hey, Natalie is an artist. Show her some of your art. So I take out my phone, and I was showing her some of my art. And she looks at me, she said, you have to exhibit here. You have to do it. And you love Mexico City. So I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. And, we finished the show. We got back home, but the seed had been planted. And there was an application deadline. And that was coming for the show. You have to apply to be selected. And I kept like denying in my head. I was like, I'm not going to do it. Like, I can't get it. Not good enough. Not this, not a professional artist, not a full-time artist. All the excuses we make when we are really terrified of being seen in a new way. That's what I was doing. But then one day, it was a weekend, and we're sitting on the couch. And I just took out my laptop and opened up the application, and I spent a couple hours putting my portfolio together, and I applied, and I just sort of put it out of my head. And a couple months later, I got an invitation to join a call for the artists that were accepted. And that was a first huge step. And from there, wow, I just got into my first big art show. I got to have an art space. So we live in Boston in a neighborhood that's called South End, and it's actually where all the art studios are. Not all, many of the art studios are. And I'd wanted an art studio for a long time, but again, there was that voice of, you are not a full-time artist. You don't deserve to have a whole studio. Why would you spend money on yourself? Those voices of fear, really a fear. And I said, hey, Avi, do you have the email for the developers? Because it's one developer that manages them. I said, just see what's available. And they replied, and there's not a lot of space that comes up because it's pretty high in demand buildings where artists want to be. But they replied and said, we have 2 spots. Actually, 2 people just moved out. So I said, okay, fine. I'll just go see them. And I went to see them, and this studio where I am. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're in my art studio. And if you're listening, I encourage you to check out my YouTube channel. and watch the videos of these episodes, we have a link in the show notes because you can see inside of my art studio. I walked into the space and it was perfect. It's airy and bright. You can't see it, but I'm looking at a wall with windows it's actually a red wall. I didn't even paint it, and I love bold color. It took me a while, of a lot of inner battle with my fears and old stories, but I got the art studio. And then the next step was I got to dedicate time to make art, because if you're going to do an art show, you need to make some time to make art. And so like you, I have a busy schedule. I speak, I mentor people, I run my Unleash Your Next Accelerator, I have other responsibilities. But I said, you know what? I'm going to make 1 day a week studio day. And initially I made it Friday, then I switched it to Monday. And what I realized is what works for me is just choose 1 day and a different day each week. I've stayed pretty consistent with it. Usually it's like 6 hours, but that's great. So I started to dedicate time to making art regularly. And I built a collection. And a couple of weeks ago, we shipped that collection of 27 paintings and 35 works on paper to Mexico City. And we had to figure out, oh my God, all the logistics of how do you pack paintings and ship them and clear customs and all the things. And I have an amazing studio manager who is my husband, who is great at that stuff. That is not my strength. I like big vision, big pictures, bold colors. I don't love tactical things, but we figured it out. And we actually got a message today that they have crossed customs. And in a few days, I will be going, you're probably listening to this episode after the show has happened, but I'll be going to exhibit at my first big international art show. Oh my God. It still feels really surreal to say it, but I'm sharing this with you because this is the thing. I didn't get the art show because I felt ready. I did not feel ready. Someone said to me the other day, "Oh, you're so brave." I don't know if I was brave. I was terrified. I am still terrified. The show is 4 days. It's 9 hours every day. It's me and 100 other talented independent artists. And they have about 25,000 people that come through that pavilion during Art Week. So I am still pretty terrified. So I didn't get the art show because I was ready. I got it because I decided it's what I want. And I just started to take small steps towards it. And that's really the magic, right? There's a lot of people who talk about manifesting. And I do think we're all, to be human is to manifest, because we're constantly creating our existence. But manifesting is not just sitting there and meditating on the thing you want. It is about deciding what you want, which can be the scariest part. One of the scariest things in my life has been to say, I am an artist and I want to be an artist in addition to all the other things I'm doing. And I'm going to do things to be that. But deciding on what you want and then taking small, consistent steps towards it without a plan, without knowing exactly how it's going to happen. Because guess what? You cannot create a plan for something you've never done before. It's not possible, right? Clarity emerges as you take action, not before it. And the same with confidence. And then the third element of doing the thing you want and getting the thing you want is you have to allow it to come into your life in a meaningful way. Meaning, I didn't know when I would do the show or where or how, but I wanted one. I decided that's what I want. And I started taking consistent action. And then I paid attention. Then when we were in Mexico City, I got some nudges from these wonderful humans. And then I took another step, right? I applied. And that's the magic, right? So many people I know get stuck and they don't act on that calling that they feel, whatever it is. Maybe it's a creative calling. Maybe it's to write a book. Maybe it's to start singing. Maybe it's to speak up more at work. Maybe it's to go for that different position in your company, whatever it is. But they get stuck because they're waiting to feel ready. They're waiting for the right time. There is never a right time. There isn't. We can never feel ready for the thing we've never done before. It is not possible. You decide. You decide when it's the right time. I just decided that this is what I wanted for my 50th birthday. You have that power to choose what you want and to choose to start moving towards it. Forget this idea of feeling ready. It doesn't exist. And so I just want to, you know, I want to talk to those of you who have maybe a, quote unquote closet passion, something that you always wanted to do or something that you've been doing, but you're being quiet about it. You're hiding it, just like I was hiding as an artist. And I want to lovingly agitate. I tell all my mentorship clients, this is my method, loving agitation. And I want to lovingly agitate you to stop hiding, to be more open about it, to find ways to share it with others. Because when we have something in our soul, in our being that is calling to us, it is our responsibility to bring it out into the world and to share it with others. I so firmly believe that. And it took me a long time to get here. It took me a long time to start sharing my art. I hosted my first open studios at my studio a couple months ago. The big art show, putting my art, my slides have my art when I'm on stage. You're looking at my art if you're watching this. But I do see it as my responsibility because it is a calling. It is something that is pulling at me. It is something that is in my zone of greatness, something that I love to do and I want to express. And it is my responsibility to share it. So stop being so quiet about yours. Stop letting the fear win and start finding ways to be more open and tell the truth about who you are, not just what you do. And, I've shared about my journey to becoming an artist or allowing myself to be who I always was as an artist at 40, at 50. And a lot of people said, wow, that's so cool. You're doing something late in life. You know what? First of all, like if you're in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, it is not late in life. You're at this incredible renaissance point. I think it is the absolute perfect time to start doing something new, to start evolving into who you're meant to become, because we've done hard things before. You have life experience, you have resilience experience. You know that you can get through challenging things. You have different strategies. It is an incredible time to do something. Age, the number is just like background noise, right? It doesn't matter. Forget about the number. If it is calling to you from inside of you, see it as your responsibility to honor it, to start taking steps to figure out how you want to share it, right? And it is going to be scary, okay? And the scariest thing, we're always afraid that we're going to fail, right? I'm going to create art for this art show. No one's going to buy it. What if people don't like it, right? That voice of fear is in there. But I think the biggest fear that we have is to be seen as our true selves. And when I am going to be standing there and sharing my art with thousands of people, I'm going to be showing a part of myself that I haven't publicly shown before. And that is really scary. And I want to acknowledge that. I want you to acknowledge that coming out as your true self is actually much scarier than anything else. And that's why I call it a dare, right? Publicly claiming your calling and who you are is the ultimate dare. Don't you think? I tell my editor to not edit the times on the podcast where I cough or take a drink of water, because I really love for these conversations to feel like we're sitting across from each other. So you hear me cough from time to time. So I want to wrap with this. Reinvention is not about becoming someone new. Reinvention is about giving yourself permission to be who you already are, to evolve into the person you've always been meant to be. I'm going to say this again because this is the very foundation of my life ethos, my own reinventions, and all my work from speaking to writing to helping people reinvent. Reinvention is not about becoming someone new. It is about giving yourself permission to evolve into who you already are. And my art show that I'm doing, it is not a miracle. It's actually the result of one terrifying yes that I said to who I am, followed by 1,000 messy brushstrokes and paintings that ended up in the garbage because they didn't work, and all these logistics we had to learn, and so many things that I tried and didn't work. But it began with this yes that I said to who I am, and to daring myself to embrace myself as an artist and to come out as an artist to the world, because I knew, and this is really helpful, I knew that I would regret it at the end of my life if you didn't. And so when you feel gripped by fear of what if I share my calling, what if I share what I'm doing and people will judge it, what if it doesn't work? When you're gripped by that fear, I just want you to ask yourself, on your deathbed, when you look back at your life, are you going to regret doing it, or are you going to regret not doing it? And I promise you, you're going to regret not doing it. There's been a lot of research with people who are close to death, and the number one thing they regret is not living their life more aligned and authentic to who they are. That is the number one regret. And so when you feel that fear gripping, that fear of allowing the world to see you for who you are, the fear of doing the thing that is calling to you and embracing it fully, I want you to go to the regret. I want you to think about, what would you regret at the end of your life? Will you regret hiding? Will you regret hiding who you are from the world and yourself? And I promise you that you will, and use the power of that to get through your fear. And so here is your dare for this week. Are you ready? What is one thing that you do, that thing that you love, that you are still being quiet about? Your dare is to claim it out loud, to stop hiding. Tell one person this week, I'm an artist, I'm a designer, I'm a writer, I'm a leader. Stop using the word just to describe your passion. So don't say, I'm just an author, I'm just a designer. I don't allow myself to say I'm just an artist. I am an artist. So stop reducing who you are. Claim yourself as who you are. Claim that identity before you are officially an expert in it. There's no such thing anyway. And then your bonus dare, okay? So that's your main dare. Your bonus dare is to take one specific action to share more of who you are with the world. So not just telling someone, claiming it, that's your big dare, but share a piece of your writing. Speak up in a meeting and be a true leader. Share a piece of art you've made. Sing for someone. Share photography. Whatever it is that you love to do, that is a calling for you, that is important to you, share it in one specific way. That's it for today's episode of Dare Yourself. If you found value in this episode, please hit follow or subscribe on YouTube and share this episode with one person who needs a little bit more courage to stop hiding their gifts. I'm Natalie Kogan, and I'll be back with another episode of Dare Yourself. Until then, the world needs your light, so stop keeping it in and go dare yourself.